And well, we are back for round 3 of Pioneer here at Car in Sunnyvale, California. So we had a little bit of tech issues, but we're all sorted out. We should be back completely.
Yep, everything should be all sorted out. You saw that the camera for the store came back online. You saw that there were a couple of other things that happened. We were able to get the life totals back working and everything. And we're getting into round 3 of Pioneer, where we are going to be seeing something you would normally expect to see, the Rakdos Vampires list, and something that you probably wouldn't be expecting to see, which a deck which was just labeled to us as dragons.
Yeah, it's just dragons. Nothing else but it's saying dragons.
Yeah, so we don't know if this is the Magda list that has been floating around. We do know there's another version of the Magda list in the room currently. I believe that one's a mono red one that is being played, where you just kind of play the Magda, both versions of Magda. You make a bunch of treasure tokens, you're able to find a bunch of dragons, you're able to do a lot of cool things with all the extra triggers and stuff that you have from there. But this deck might be a little bit different. We don't really know what to expect. But the one constant is we do know what to expect from the Rakdos Vampires list, which is
the boogeyman of this format.
Exactly. So we are going to be getting into game number 1 for this match in just a second. So you see here, Charles on the left is going to be the Vampires player, and then Eric over on the right is going to be the Dragons player.
Dragons.
I'm going to be saying, even though you can't see it, I'm going to be saying with jazz hands for the entirety of this broadcast.
So it looks like Eric did win the gyro. So be on the play. So actually, that's actually pretty huge against the Vampires list. Being on the play against Vampires, so you actually can be prepped for that turn 3 Vein Ripper is actually massive.
Yeah. We all know what the Vampires listers want to do as soon as possible. They want to play that Sorin combo to get Vein Ripper out. They also have ways to kind of attack your hand. So being able to play a Thought Seize, being able to do something along the lines of like Duress to just slow you down, very powerful effects. So it does look like that Vampires is going to be taking a mulligan. From the side of Eric, I do see that there is a, it looks like a beanstalk, up the beanstalk in Eric's hand. So that may not be a Dragon's deck like Magda after all. And it may be something a little bit more along the lines of Nivtalite, which does have multiple dragons in its shell as well. But we don't know if there's going to be additional copies besides those 2 that would be in the deck.
I'll keep this hand. Ready? No, I need a bottom one. Oh, that's right. Go first.
Sorry about that. I had to go fix the camera, so we're still fixing some things here.
Unfortunate. That's what happens when you have some tech issues. But what we did discover now is that Eric's Dragons deck may be something a little along the lines of a Gruul or 5-color ramp shell. We see a gold span dragon in his hand, in addition to up the beanstalk.
Up the beanstalk in Pioneer?
Well, you see what happens when you have dragons is they have very large converted mana costs. So when you cast a 5-mana dragon, up the beanstalk says, sure, you could draw a card on top of that. So that's not the worst thing to kind of see alongside it, but a little bit smaller side than some of these dragons might be. We see Charles playing out just Bloodtide Harvester, making a blood token, passing the turn. So a little bit of a aggressive play here. Potentially with a 3-2 on the battlefield. And this is a card, I believe, from Aftermath that I didn't think I would ever see that reduces the cost or gives mana for dragons. This is even eluding my Pioneer knowledge, not something I had on my radar whatsoever. But that's just got played from Eric, so I'm excited to start seeing some dragons.
I will not know what that does. I'm sorry. So it looks like we're actually going to torch whatever that card is.
Yeah, just immediately wanting to get rid of that card. So getting rid of the blood token thanks to Bargain, making sure that that creature just does not reduce the cost of dragons.
So we're going to... Seems like Charles can have the card he has still face down. 4. So actually activate the Mindeval, swing in, bring Eric down to 13. It's a little bit electoral discrepancy. Sorry about that. We're still not sure what that card is that Eric did play. So it seems like we're going to play Overgrown 2 tap for Eric here. Eric's debating to do something. Actually, I'd like to pass. So Charles here is very much chillaxing. with the current board state here. Maybe he'll swing again with that Mutavault. Not too sure. So actually gonna let swing for 2. Actually, sorry, for 3, my bad. Down to 10. And we're gonna play Fable the Mirror Breaker. Very strong card here that even in Modern is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so Charles slamming down the Fable. Waited a turn later to do it just to be able to respond to a creature that Eric was going to be playing. So Fable the Mirror Breaker with this Blood Tide Harvester also means you're going to be able to just generate a blood token or more every single turn if it flips.
Ooh.
Gold Span Dragon. I know that one.
So we're talking 5 ever Gold Span Dragon. We're gonna look up what this card is, as I
this
definitely
is a doozy.
don't know what this card does.
If you've played Standard at the release of Kaldheim, it was nigh impossible to avoid Goldspan Dragon from being played against you or you having to play it. This creature does pretty much everything. If it attacks or gets targeted by a removal spell, you get to make a treasure token, and treasure tokens add 2 mana instead of just 1. So it's basically like if Kinnan was a dragon.
Jesus. Also, too, don't forget, Up the Beanstalk trigger does happen off of this card. So Eric is basically playing the card for free.
This is kind of like your...
Oh!
It's a Heartless Act coming out from Charles.
Heartless Act comes out, so target trigger. So he's gonna make. So Eric is gonna make the treasure token. Yeah. Charles out here offering the treasure token since Eric doesn't have any. It's very interesting though. So I'm not too sure what that card is, but he's playing a counter spell.
That is Silumgar's Scorn. Oh man, this was a standard all-star.
Oh my god, it's got so
Love Eric's deck. Esper Dragons players around the world, wake up. Silumgar's Scorn, it's just censor if you don't have a dragon. Or if you have one in your hand, it's hard counterspell. So this is awesome to see. Eric, however, is still on the losing end of this matchup right now.
But who cares?
This is just a sweet deck to see.
I don't think I understand the amount of whiplash I just got after I saw the art. I don't know the card name, but when I played Standard, I saw the art. I'm just like, what is that, another one?
That's a second Silumgar's Scorn, so this is just doing work. Charles burning all the removal possible, making treasure tokens for Eric to cast Silumgar's Scorn off of just 1 treasure.
Also, speaking of treasure tokens, looks like I got double Fable in the hand for Eric, so we're gonna get a lot of treasures really quick.
That's true, and you know what Fable the Mirror Breaker is really good at doing? Copying non-legendary cards. You know what is not a legendary card?
Gold Span.
Gold Span Dragon.
I think Eric actually is going to potentially just run away with this game.
So we were assuming that Fable the Mirror Breaker copying Vein Ripper was going to be the thing we needed to worry about in this matchup, but it might wind up being Fable the Mirror Breaker copying Gold Span Dragons to win the game.
When was the last time you ever said those words out of your mouth?
Never, because I don't think... Well, there was probably a little bit of overlap when Fable and Goldspan Dragon were legal in Standard. They might not have been, though, because I think it was still old rotation. I don't remember when Kaldheim came out versus Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. They might not have actually seen play together. I don't think they existed. This might be the first time I've ever said that.
Oh, actually, so it looks like both players did miss some damage here. So Eric, they're correcting it. So Eric is actually down to 8 instead of 10 because he did miss the damage from the Goblin Shaman.
Yep, he did wind up getting rid of the Blood Tithe Harvester, but the Shaman did still swing in. And now we get a flip of the Fable the Mirror Breaker coming out from Charles. So we are going to see Reflection of Kiki Jiki. And now Charles does have a couple of cards still in hand. If this is Vein Ripper on 6 mana... That's pretty solid right there.
Vein Ripper, so they cannot be countered.
Yep, so no Silumgar's Scorn.
Oh, no, Silumgar's Scorn! I don't think... Oh,
it was Cavernous Soul.
Punish here! I mean, how often do you see Cavernous Souls come out of... Just come out in general from the Vein Ripper deck?
Pretty often.
Pretty often. I'm not gonna lie. I'm assuming that there's not a lot of Cavernous being played in the Vein Ripper deck, so
So I do believe there are 2 main deck copies in a lot of the Vampires lists. However, some of them have been shaving them more recently in order to get access to basic Mountain, which is something that with more Field of Ruin decks like Azorius Control, Waste Not in the metagame, they are kind of cutting some of these utility lands. With less counter spells as well. You don't need as many Cavernous Souls, but Charles looking like he's still rocking 2 in his list here. So Eric now going to be digging deep for some answers. Discards 2 cards, including a Cavern of Souls. And now we're in the precarious position of, we know this Vein Ripper's triggering next. This Vein Ripper's going to get copied next turn. So if that happens, doesn't matter if Charles attacks either. We're going to get 2 Vein Ripper triggers to deal exactly lethal to Eric, even if he doesn't attack.
So Cavernous Demon Dragon here. I mean, not surprised.
Nope. That's also something I'd expect from this deck to be playing.
What?
Oh, Zergo?
Zergo Jutai?
And Ojitai.
Oh, it's
I
Ojitai.
think it's Zergo and Ojitai, or is it Ojitai and Zergo? It's Zergo and Ojitai. So this has hexproof as long as it's entered the battlefield this turn. It has flying. It has haste. It's a okay. The card's on screen. I don't need to do this from memory. It's a 4/4. And whenever 1 or more dragons you control deal combat damage, you get to basically anticipate. So this is a throwback to the Ojitai that was just a Azorius card from Dragons of Tarkir, but has the haste portion and the damaging portion that Zergo had. But making the copy of the Vein Ripper is just going to be enough right there. 4 damage going to be being dealt to Eric from those dies triggers. And despite how sweet the Dragons deck looks, it's the staple of the format. It's the Vampires deck taking game number 1.
Yeah, so we're going to see Vampire do Vampires things. Don't care. We saw amazing cards come out from Eric's end. I mean, that's what I think. The fact that Eric is 2-0 with this deck tonight is very cool.
It's definitely very cool. And now this is going to be something that I'm very interested in seeing. So we did see multiple basic land types from Eric. It's basically assuming he's on 5-color dragons right now, which means that access to cards like Leyline Binding is available. Leyline Binding with Up the Beanstalk could be something we see coming out of the sideboard, or maybe it's in the main deck, we just didn't see it. With Cavernous Souls being shown from Charles's deck, I am assuming that these Silumgar Scorns are being cut in some number to kind of go down so that there's no counter spells, but that could mean that we see things like Leyline Binding, maybe some Aether Gusts if they're in the board, just to deal with the red side of the cards from Charles's deck, although that's mostly Fable the Mirror Breaker and not really hitting the Sorin Vein Ripper combo. Being on the play, I can see Silumgar Scorn just kind of being Force Spike against the Sorintel combo, but I'm also interested in some of the Dragons Matter cards that could be coming out from this deck, such as Dragon's Fire, which is going to be a card that, with Adventures in Forgotten Realms, is something that would be dealing 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker. And if you have a dragon, you will deal the damage of the dragon's power instead. That could be something we see coming in here as an answer to a resolved Sorin. It doesn't quite deal with Vein Ripper unless you have a 5-power dragon on the battlefield, and it still gets the trigger from that. But it is a thing that Eric's deck could be putting out.
Now, would Eric? I'm assuming that Eric is playing at least a copy of Niv Mizzet.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So which Niv Mizzet?
I actually what's the one that plays in Niv? I'm assuming you're playing the one that you do play Niv Delight.
Oh, you're looking. Okay, so which Niv Delight? Because there's Niv Mizzet Supreme, which is the Aftermath card, which is protection from monocolor, which is or hexproof from monocolor, which is important in a deck that is going to have
really good against
monocolor
vampires.
removal. But there is that gives all of your spells jumpstart, all of your dual color spells jumpstart. That one we're probably not seeing. We're probably seeing Niv Mizzet Reborn, which is the one that will allow you to look at the top 10 cards of your library and take one of each color pairing from the guilds and put it into your hand. We did see, I believe it was Sarkhan was the card that we saw, which reduces the dragon spell cost by 1 coming out from Eric's deck. That's one hit that he could have there. If there are any of the dual colored Dragon Lords, like Dragon Lord Kolagon, Dragon Lord Atarka coming out from the Dragon's deck, those are hits that you can get off of Niv Mizzet Supreme.
Very interesting to see the sideboarding on both ends, especially since they play. Okay, well,
I told
you. Well, Eric in chat let me know that this deck does play both the Mizzets. So
So
there's our answer.
Charles, also from the Vampire sideboard, you're probably going to see extra Go for the Throats. You're probably going to see Bitter Triumphs or Heartless Acts, whatever the removal of choice is coming in from him. Maybe because of those Silumgar Scorns and the Up the Beanstalks, we see Duress being brought in, but I think that it's something that you don't necessarily need for this matchup. If there are any sort of Lilianas or Archfiend of the Dross in the deck or the board, those probably stay in. We saw Eric with a very low board presence, just slamming big dragons if you can. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Liliana -2 being something that works out.
So Eric looks like he has double push in hand. So Charles is gonna play Thoughtseize, and you're gonna see the double push and the Fable ooh. So take the Fable, but this.
Is this also a hand that only has Haunted Ridge as colored mana? Is that Cavern?
It's triple Cavern. This one's the Lord of the Rings art. 2 is from the Lost Cavern Ixalan. So, wow, we're keeping a hand with triple Cavern of Souls. So, ooh, Bankbuster. Now, this is the one card in Pioneer that I do know, because I did playtest with the Rakdos Vampires deck, and this card was such a bomb. Like, Bankbuster, especially in these longer matchups, does get you that card advantage. In worst case scenario, I mean, eventually you become a 4/4 that you're going to crew with one creature.
Yeah, and Bankbuster, of course, has the immediately playable, or at least in consideration playable text on the card, draw a card, which is very good if you're going to be treating this deck like a mid-range deck or a ramp into mid-range style deck, where you're able to draw cards, keep up your card advantage, and just keep up the interaction to 1-for-1 remove. We did see Charles opting to keep the Duresses in his deck, so he's only able to really get a Fatal Push for his trouble, and now we see Eric just kind of top decking all the colored mana that he needs. Is this a Dragonfire Orb?
Wow. Let's pull up this card real quick. Dragonfire Orb.
That is not the name of it. It is something dragon
something orb. Something dragon orb. Oh, I think
this Orb of Dragonkind, that's what it was called.
Yeah, Orb of Dragonkin. Let's pull this up here. 1 mana. Was it 1 mana and tap? Add 2 mana in any color combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast dragon spells or activate abilities of dragons. And then 1 red, 1 to tap. Sacrifice Orb of the Dragonkin. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a dragon card from among them and put it into your hand and put the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. So basically, it's a dig effect.
It's basically what is it? The recruiter card that we used to see play in the Coco list, but for dragons. And then we do have Charles opting to had a Thoughtseize, knows everything that's in hand, so we just see Sorin being slammed down right here.
So actually, Soar into Vein Ripper on turn 4. Not the fastest you can get it out.
That's fine.
But this is more than enough considering Eric's hand is literally just a push, a land, and 1 unknown card.
So no answers to Vein Ripper right now. Sorin's going to pump that up to a 7-power creature next turn, which immediately puts Eric down into the danger zone. But there's a Sarkhan, that card that we saw before.
Yeah, so Sarkhan, Soul of Flame?
I believe that's what that card was. Although the art looks a little bit different, so it could just be something completely different. But unfortunately, it does look like it might be a Gruul card. But I am assuming that it's going to be something along the lines of I know there's a dragon reducing cost card from Aftermath or something, but I just am blanking on the name of it. I don't know if it's Aftermath or NKM or what.
Comes out for Charles. I mean, it's hard to tell what a lot of these cards are considering the artwork. There's a lot of different artworks for a lot of these cards.
That's the point of being a Magic the Gathering caster. You need to all of a sudden start knowing what Hatsune Miku card is going to be on the battlefield and which Doctor Who character it interacts with the most. But then Assassin's Creed is going to make sure that they counterspell your Final Fantasy card. And we're playing Magic the Gathering, so. But we are going to just see the Shielder's Edict get rid of a blocker. If that could even block the Vein Ripper. 7 power, 14 total life swing because of the life link added from Sorin. We see Up the Beanstalk here just digging for an answer, but I don't know what you can actually have here to get rid of the 6 toughness now on this Vein Ripper.
Yeah, this board state is looking really hard to beat now for Erickson, especially he's just flooding out.
And it does look like that Eric maybe, I don't know if those Fatal Pushes are main deck, we just didn't see them game one, but it looks like he may have just kind of overboarded spells and just has no threats right now, which you do need to apply pressure to the Vampires deck to kind of get it into the point that it's on the
Ooh.
back foot a little bit.
Oh, so this is the one dragon I do know because it is a money card from this set, and I know Commander players are crazy about it. But Bornhorn Dracosaur, it's a flying first strike 5/5. And I bring the upkeep. You look at the top 2 cards you exile the top 2 cards of the library, and you may play in this turn. If you exile a land card this way, you make a 3/1 dinosaur token, and you exile a non-land, you make a treasure. So we could get a bunch of chump blockers in front of this Vein Ripper.
The problem is the Vein Ripper flies, so those dinosaurs, unfortunately, dinosaurs don't have wings all the time, unlike Bonehorde Dracosaur. So if we are going to see a block, there is Bonehorde Dracosaur having first strike. So if we're able to get this up to, which will probably have to be 7 power coming up soon.
Thoughtseize comes out. Fable the Mirror Breaker, they take out a hand for Eric.
So this is just Eric right there. That Fable the Mirror Breaker potentially represented living for an extra turn. But now with the Fable gone, potentially 8 damage coming across here, it could wind up being, if this is just a Dusk Legion Zealot. Oh!
Be the Triumph.
I was going to say, Dusk Legion Zealot could have been lethal if you just fling it with Sorin. That winds up dealing 5 total damage and then 7 coming across from the Vein Ripper. But instead, that's an additional 2 damage that was, or 2 life that was gained from Charles's side off of the Vein Ripper trigger. 2 more lost from Eric, and now 8 going across. So Charles should be going up to 30 here, and Eric is 1 Sorin minus away from dead.
Yeah, not looking too hot here. Unless you can Eric can top deck away. Oh, it's another land again!
Oh,
The fly is a bit too much.
So unfortunately, it's going to be Dragons not winning the game. It's going to be Dragons just kind of folding to the power of the Vampires deck, but still a really just solid plan from Charles in both games. I know we were kind of a little excited about the Dragon deck, but the Vampires deck kind of did what makes it a very powerful staple in the Pioneer format right now. It just wound up kind of going for disruption, removal, clearing the way with those in order to land a Fable the Mirror Breaker on game number 1, which then found the Vein Ripper in addition to the Sorin that Charles just kept in his hand, even though there were a bunch of big dragons and multiple Silumgar Scorns. Sorry, not the Sorin, the Vein Ripper that he was able to play out. The Silumgar Scorns could not counter the Cavern of Souls Vein Ripper. He just bought enough time for himself to survive, was not under a big threat from that Goldspan Dragon. And then in game number 2, we kind of got a chance to see the deck do its thing. It was kind of goldfishing. Once you took away the Fable of the Mirror Breaker from the Dragons deck, it didn't have the ability to restock its hand. It just had a couple of Fatal Pushes, which didn't really do anything against Sorin plus Vein Ripper.